Chapter 6. The Ghost Tether. The emerald punched through the thick, smog-choked atmosphere of Draven, the violent rattling of the ascent smoothing out into the silent, frictionless glide of the upper stratosphere. Finn sat rigid in the pilot's chair, his dark eyes locked on the tactical display. Beside the sleek, green-tinged schematic of his own ship, a massive, blocky orange icon flashed steadily. Amara was keeping the silly goose tucked perfectly into his slipstream, matching his thrust vector with the effortless precision of a seasoned blockade runner. They were out of the gravity well, but they were far from safe. Finn tapped the comms panel, opening a secure, short-range frequency to the goose. "Amara, we're clear of the planetary defense grid for now. What's our heading to your ship?" "I'm docked at Orbital Relay Station 9. Amara's voice crackled through the cockpit speakers, tight and focused. "It's 3 sectors over, hanging in the shadow of Draven's second moon. We need to burn hard before Athelgard realizes you didn't show up at the morgue. If Carver is half as smart as he looks, he's tearing apart the Apex port launch logs right now. The moment they realize the Emerald and the Goose launched simultaneously, they'll scramble hunter-killers. We can't just fly to Relay 9. They'll track our transponders and trap your ship on the docking ring. Then we have to hit the primary jump gate and lose them in the neighboring system," Amara countered over the static. "It's too far," Finn replied, his hands flying across the analog switches of his console, desperately searching for a solution. "They will catch us before we reach the jump gate. And even if we made it, getting through would be impossible. The corporate syndicates heavily regulate the gates, and Athelgard is already looking for us. We'd be trapped at the aperture." He studied the lumbering orange icon of his brother's ship on the scanner. The silly goose was a beacon, slow and impossible to miss. Together, they were doomed. Apart, the Emerald might just slip away unnoticed. There was only one way to reach Amara's blockade runner without leading Athelgard straight to it. "Amara," Finn said, his voice dropping into a low, deadly, serious register. "I have an idea, but you aren't going to like it." The comms line went quiet for a long moment, save for the hum of the engines. "Try me." "We do a fake slaving," Finn said, his fingers already pulling up a heavily encrypted custom software patch buried deep in the Emerald's navigational drive. "I'll broadcast a slaving sequence to link our nav computers. But instead of physically tethering the ships, I'll attach a spoofed transponder node to the hull of the Goose. I'll program her autopilot to burn hard on a random vector into deep space, broadcasting both our signatures. While they chase a ghost, we burn dark and silent for Relay 9 in my ship." Amara was silent for a long time. The static hissed over the open channel. "You're talking about sacrificing Leon's ship," Amara said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "If they catch it, they'll blow it to slag." "I know," Finn rasped, closing his eyes tightly. "I hate it. But the Goose is a piece of metal, Amara. Leon is gone. We have to survive. Bring her in close. I'm dropping the Emerald's shields. We need to be within 10 meters to initiate the physical handshake." "Copy that. Bringing her in," Amara replied. On the tactical display, the massive orange icon of the Goose slid smoothly toward the Emerald. Finn looked out the viewport. The bulky, faded industrial hull of his brother's ship filled the entire window, hovering silently against the glittering backdrop of the stars. It was so close he could see the scorch marks from atmospheric re-entry on her nose cone. Finn was about to hit the sync toggle when a flicker of movement caught his eye. He frowned, leaning closer to the viewport. Through one of the narrow plasteel windows of the Goose's upper living quarters, the wood-paneled lounge, he saw something move. It was brief, just a shadow darting across the glass, but a pale face had distinctly peered out at the emerald before vanishing back into the gloom. "Amara," Finn said, his voice suddenly sharp, his hand dropping to the blaster at his hip. "You might have company over there. I just saw someone looking out the starboard lounge viewport. Looked like a kid." "What?" Amara demanded, the sudden scrape of her pilot's chair echoing over the comms. "Hold the sync, Finn. I'm checking." Aboard the Silly Goose, Amara drew her own heavy, snub-nosed blaster. She moved silently off the flight deck, keeping her back to the bulkhead as she keyed open the hatch to the main living quarters. The room was dim, illuminated only by the warm, flickering orange glow of Leon's holographic fireplace. Amara swept the barrel of her blaster across the empty plaid armchairs and the antique rugs. "Whoever you are, you'd better come out," Amara called out, her voice hard and uncompromising. "This ship is about to be abandoned in hard vacuum." For a long, tense second, there was only the synthetic crackle of the fake fire. Then, slowly, a small figure stood up from behind the long leather couch in the corner. Amara eased her blaster down, eyes widening. A girl, maybe 10, stood before her, frail, with ragged, cropped hair and a shapeless gray tunic that screamed of institutions. She shook uncontrollably, her terrified gaze flicking between Amara and the antique rifle on the wall. The girl didn't raise her hands. She just stared at the red-haired pilot. "What happened to Leon?" the girl asked, her voice small and trembling, but surprisingly clear. Amara froze, the breath catching in her throat. She slowly holstered her blaster, taking a cautious step forward. "How do you know Leon?" The young girl hugged her thin arms tightly across her chest. "He helped me escape from the facility. He told me to hide here. He said he would come back. He didn't. And someone else moved the ship. Where is he?" Amara stared at the child, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly slamming into place with horrifying clarity. The ghost cargo, Leon hadn't been hauling illicit tech or stolen weapons for Athelgard. He had been smuggling a child. Amara tapped her wrist calm. "Finn, you're going to want to hear this. Expect an extra crewmate." "An extra crewmate?" Finn's voice crackled back, thick with confusion. "Amara, who is it?" "She says Leon helped her escape," Amara replied, moving toward a storage locker near the bulkhead. She pulled out a small, bright orange emergency EVA suit, the kind usually kept for civilian passengers. "We don't have time to unpack this now. We have to get her suited up and across the void to the Emerald." Finn was silent for a heavy moment. Then his voice returned, stripped of all grief and replaced by a cold, protective steel. "Okay. I'll jump over first and attach the spoofed node to the Goose. Then I'll meet you at the starboard hatch, and we can both help the girl over to the Emerald together. Get her suited up." "Copy that," Amara said, kneeling down in front of the terrified girl and offering her the bulky orange suit. "Come on, kid. I'm taking you to Leon's brother." Aboard the Emerald, Finn left the flight deck and descended quickly into the lower cargo hold. He gripped the heavy rungs of the primary maintenance ladder, pulled the hidden release lever, and slid the ladder upward. He reached into the concealed compartment in the hull plating, his hand closing over the heavy, matte black transponder node. Finn closed his eyes, a fresh wave of agony washing over him, followed instantly by a surge of overwhelming pride. Leon hadn't just been a courier. He had died trying to pull a kid out of a corporate meat grinder. Finn pulled the node out, closed the compartment, and headed for the airlock. He pulled his bulky, heavy-duty EVA suit from its locker, stepping into the reinforced legs and sealing the magnetic clasps up his chest. He grabbed his helmet, twisting it into place. The HUD flickered to life. Finn stepped into the cramped chamber of the Emerald's primary airlock. He hit the depressurization cycle. The heavy inner door hissed shut, and the atmosphere was sucked out of the room. The outer door slid open, revealing the terrifying, silent infinity of the void. 10 meters away, the massive, faded orange hull of the Silly Goose hung dead in the black. Finn didn't hesitate. He grabbed the airlock's edges, bent his knees, and pushed off into the vacuum. He drifted across the terrifyingly deep chasm between the two ships, hitting the thick durasteel plating of the Silly Goose with a heavy, jarring thud. His magnetic boots instantly engaged. He unclipped the spoofed transponder node from his belt, slapped it hard against the orange metal near the starboard thruster bank, and twisted the locking mechanism. A tiny, imperceptible green light flashed on the node. Finn carefully walked his magnetic boots along the hull until he reached the Goose's starboard hatch. The outer door slid open. Amara emerged in her battered yellow EVA suit, gently guiding the small, terrified girl clad in the bulky orange emergency suit. Finn reached out, grabbing the girl's forearm to steady her, then grabbed Amara's arm. "Ready?" Finn's voice transmitted through the comm. Amara nodded behind her visor. Together, flanking the young girl, they disengaged their mag boots and pushed hard off the Goose's hull, floating back across the 10-meter gap toward the open airlock of the Emerald. They were exactly halfway across the void when a sharp, shrill alarm suddenly shrieked inside Finn's helmet. Finn's blood ran cold. He glanced at the tactical readout projected on his visor. Faint, hostile radar pings were brushing against the Emerald's hull. "Carver's hunters," Finn swore, pulling the young girl tighter against his side. "They're entering sensor range." "We need to move!" Amara yelled over the comms. They crashed clumsily into the Emerald's airlock, bouncing off the padded walls. Finn pushed the girl safely behind him and desperately slammed his fist against the emergency repressurization button. The outer doors slid shut, cutting off the terrifying expanse of the void. Before the oxygen levels had even fully equalized, Finn popped the seal on his helmet, tossing it to the floor. He didn't wait to strip off the rest of the suit. He sprinted up the companionway to the flight deck, heavy mag boots clanking against the grating. Finn threw himself into the pilot's chair, his hands flying across the analog console. Amara joined him in the next seat a second later, pulling off her helmet and bringing up the tactical scanners, while the young girl stood frozen at the back of the cockpit, her wide eyes staring out from her still-attached helmet. 3 bogies, fast movers, dropping out of high orbit, Amara reported, her voice perfectly steady despite the panic. "They haven't locked onto us yet, but we have seconds before they clear the interference. I have the Goose's autopilot slaved," Amara told Finn, her finger hovering over the execute switch for the Ghost Tether sequence. "Vector is set. Pushing engines to maximum burn on your mark." Finn took a deep, shaky breath. He looked at the bulky orange ship one last time. "I've got her, Leon." "Mark!" Amara flipped the switch. Instantly, the massive sublight engines of the Silly Goose ignited, blasting a blindingly bright flare of blue-white exhaust into the void. The heavy freighter tore away from them with incredible speed, its transponder screaming at maximum volume across all frequencies, dragging the spoofed signature of the Emerald right alongside it. "They took the bait!" Amara shouted, watching the tactical display as the three hostile hunter-killers instantly banked hard, tearing off into deep space in pursuit of the roaring orange decoy. Finn didn't celebrate. He was occupied, shutting down all non-essentials and engaging stealth systems, until the cockpit was bathed only in the faint, red glow of emergency lighting. With the massive diversion screaming into the black, Finn gently, silently engaged the drive. Running completely dark and silent, the Emerald slipped slowly away from the chaos, drifting like a ghost into the depths of the void toward Relay 9.